Welcome to the first Geek 411 book club. Super excited to talk about Ready Player 2 tonight. But before we get into that, you can find us at all the social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as OneGeek411. Come and chat with us at our Discord server or shoot us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. And check out our show notes at our website, onegeek411.com. You can watch us live on Twitch every Monday night at 6:45 Mountain Time and find the video later on our YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and check out our sweet, sweet merch at our Redbubble store. I'm Shanine, and with me I have Emma.
Hi. We're actually working this time. I'm doing good. I forgot if that was asked, but I'm doing good. We're working. Cameron, your face is a little squished on Twitch, but I don't know if you care.
I can see if I can fix that. Live on the
And with me, I also have Cameron.
Hello.
Speaking of which,
we're doing so good.
It is indeed a stream.
Yes.
And while we're figuring that out, happy Tolkien Reading Day to everyone. Come on. There we go.
Woo.
Oh, almost.
Gotta believe.
It doesn't wanna.
Oh.
Sad. But it is a glass from the Green Dragon. Happy Tolkien Reading Day, everyone.
Woo.
All right. Are we ready to jump in?
The T in Twitch stands for technical difficulties.
Yes,
courtesy of chat.
That's why there's two T's.
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So, here we go. A synopsis of Ready Player 2. A few years after the end of Halliday's Easter egg contest, the High Five is running GSS, the Oasis, and many other global initiatives, but the group itself is not as tight as it once was. And Halliday seems to have one last surprise for his heir. The Oasis Neural Interface, a non-invasive brain-computer interface allowing people to access the Oasis and more with nothing but their thoughts. The popularity of the ONI grows and triggers the beginning of a final Halliday quest to locate and join the 7 shards of the Siren's soul. This quest quickly becomes a life-or-death mission when Halliday's NPC avatar Anorak reveals himself to be an advanced AI with his own motives for finding the Siren's soul. Dun dun dun.
I feel like this quickly becomes a life or death thing is like an understatement, but we'll get there.
Quickly, like 300 pages in. I'm going to start this off with a quote from one of the new characters from Ready Player 2. I'm not going to say it right. Lohengrin?
That's how I said it.
Yeah, right? Okay. Some people define themselves by railing against all of the things they hate while explaining why everyone else should hate it too. But not me. I prefer to lead with my love. To define myself through joyous yaps of admiration instead of cynical declarations of disdain. And wow, I don't hate this book, and I don't think you should hate it either. There will be a lot of railing to follow.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, in one sentence or less, what are your first impressions?
To go off that concept, or comment. Great concept needs work.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It's one of those. It should have been more different, I guess is the way to say that. We'll get into that more. But like, it should have been more different.
Yeah, I agree. Good concept. Too many words.
Yeah, it definitely could have been edited a few more times, and the overall idea and of the plot sort of fits within the world that was already created in Ready Player One, but it definitely could have been. Oh, thank you. it works in the world created in Ready Player One, but it needed to be refined better, and it didn't feel totally planned out. That's my overall thought.
I'm going to share a quote. This is from our previous book club. So in this, you can guess who said this too. I do feel like too much time was spent on exposition at the beginning in a way that definitely felt slow. Like, I feel like they could have gotten a lot of that information and world building across in ways that were more interesting. Which was said
Which was a continuous problem in this book as well.
Yes.
I don't remember when, but there was an actual example of it at one point that was literally like, he gave us information, new information, in like 2 sentences, and then literally the next paragraph down was an entire paragraph where he then takes that new information and then like says it again in like 3 different ways. And I'm like, this is, you can just delete this entire paragraph and still have the entire thing make sense.
Yeah.
Your audience is not dumb. We can fill in the holes.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of exposition in the first one, but it didn't bother me as much. This one, I was like, let's get going. Like, you're not saying anything of import right now.
Yeah.
All right, let's start with something good. What was your favorite part of the book?
If I'm being perfectly honest, the part where I finished it.
Fair.
I mean, it wasn't like a terrible book overall, but like it's definitely one of those books that like I would have picked up and started reading and then gone and then given it to Goodwill.
I'll say for me, like in general, I like the back like third of the book a lot more than the first 2/3. Like I think around like Shard 5, end of Shard 4, is really when like I think the writing got a lot more interesting. And I like even, I mean, I guess even for like the shards before that, there was some cool stuff, but I feel like that those last, I mean, again, like I don't know anything about writing. We'll get that out of the way. I feel like the last 3 to 4 shards were the ones that were really thought out ahead of time, and then the other ones were like, what references could we have put in? And that's how we got the first 2, or 2 of the first 3, I guess. But like, so I really liked that back third, especially the Middle Earth portion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, in chat, Chunk says the John Hughes part. That was fun. Mm-hmm. I did like that. I mean, classic John Hughes, right?
I don't know who John Hughes is.
Emma, did you read
I know.
the book?
Did you read about Shard 3?
Yes.
Have you heard of the Breakfast Club?
Yes, but that implies that I remember the names of the directors who made movies, which I don't.
Okay, well, you should learn about John Hughes. My favorite part was just like the very end, the Og versus Anorak face-off.
Yeah.
It was cool. It felt like a good culmination of the story with like the creators facing off, and there was some real life consequences as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a video game battle. It was like intense.
Yeah. I also liked that part. It was fun to read. But at the same time, it felt like that part was specifically written for a movie, like with the intention of a movie being made. It was just like, eh. But it was definitely fun to read, and I also enjoyed that part. The Prince Planet. Someone chat mentioned the Prince Planet, and that was also kind of fun to read, and definitely had that sense of quirkiness.
And what was everyone's least favorite parts?
So I'll say for me, I think a lot of it is like symptomatic, where it's like it's not necessarily one thing in specific, but it's the repetition of certain things. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was a whole lot of Wade goes to a planet, one of the high five, and then they go on these extremely long fetch quests, and that takes way too much time, and then something cool happens. So I'll use like the John Hughes like
Yeah,
planet as an example. Like
I was gonna say that
yeah, like that the
it
premise
that felt
is
like it dragged on.
yeah, and like that the end of it, like that end premise of changing the script back to what it originally was is such a cool idea. It just took so long to get there. And then even like the Prince planet. And I say this as someone who's not like a specifically big Prince fan, but like that planet was a really cool idea, but it just felt so long to get to that fight at the end. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
such a cool scene. It just took so long to get there. And so just kind of that repetition that really I
Yeah.
think was the thing that like drug on for me.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is this was something else I noticed was it was often either that repetition or Wade going, and then we did this, and then we did that, and then we did this, and then we did that, all in the course of like half a page. And then. And it happened a couple of times throughout the book. Where I was like, you're spending all of this time going into way too much detail that drags on these scenes, and then you just give us and then. But I don't know. I'm just getting picky.
I feel like my least favorite parts can be summed up as shut up, Wade. There was just like I don't at least the first 100 pages of the book weren't even into the plot yet. Like he just went on and on about his life. And I'm like, I don't actually care about your life, Wade. Like this could have been summed up in like one chapter, not like 12. And
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, like explaining every single reference at every single world they went to. Like we didn't need to know who was in all the classrooms in the school on the John Hughes planet. We
Yep.
didn't need to, like there was just too many references and there was too much shoved in, and it just made it seem so long. And then just like the characters talking themselves, they didn't really seem to understand the gravity of the situation. Like they had an
Yeah.
initial freak out, and then while they're adventuring, they're like, this is fun. Let's joke and
Yeah.
make fun of each other and point out things that are cool. And I'm like, or maybe we could focus on saving
Yeah.
millions of people's
Yeah.
lives.
I'll say in that sense,
Yeah.
like I definitely got the feel that like this felt like a video game in the sense, like I'll use like Skyrim as the example. Whereas there's this really big plot going on, but no one cares about the actual plot.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how it felt, and
And
like and
yeah,
time felt super arbitrary. Where it's like
they were given this time limit,
yeah, but like
but
how
it
it
didn't have that tension of the time limit.
exactly. It was kind of like the time limit was just there to be like, oh, there's only so much time left, but there was no rush. And again, going back to the example I just had, like the chapters didn't feel like people were in a hurry.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, oh, it's convenient that we all know where we're going, or we all, as in the one person with Wade on that given planet, knows where they're going.
Yeah.
And like it was just kind of one of those. I was like,
Well, and yeah, and part of that really stood out to me too was how Artemis's attitude toward the O&I just sort of suddenly shifted when this big problem came up of like Wade mentions it that she could have said I told you so, when like they all get trapped, but she's just stands there and is like, okay, let's deal with this. Like he's there was so much time spent on Artemis fighting back against releasing this headset that when a big disaster happens directly connected to it, like I would have expected her to stick to her guns a little bit in that moment of granted it would have like sucked, but and been made her another bad guy in some sense, but yeah.
All right. Since Chris couldn't be with us tonight, he sent some thoughts, and I'm going to read a couple of them now. He said, H and Shoto take more of a backseat this time around, which is disappointing.
Completely agree. Or it's like they're there, but again, they basically are just guides. Like they don't feel like characters. They feel like NPCs.
Yeah.
Like
yeah. Yeah, a little bit. And Chris also says, Wade continues to make bad decisions and self-sabotage. The best thing to come from his previous success is the encouragement of the youthful low five, encouraged that their life could be more. Wish they played a bigger part.
Yep, completely agree.
Yeah, they were definitely a bit of a savior plot point. In the sense that the only like if you were to take the low five out of it entirely, Wade would not have found the first crystal, and they would not have gotten the sword, the dork sword, to kill whatever his name is with Anorak. And so the low five definitely felt like almost entirely a savior plot point.
Yeah, very Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, just we need your help because we don't have time. Go find this sword. Yeah. And then they just show up with it later on. And it's like, well, we could have like followed them a little bit, spent like a different like changed the pace of it a little bit and like followed them going to get the sword for a chapter or two and then gone back to Wade and all these other people. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay. A fun question from Chunk the Hut. What was your favorite test for a shard?
So, in terms of like what it means for like the game world, I really like them going to the educational planet for the fourth shard.
Yeah.
Like, I don't necessarily think that that's like the most fun shard or anything like that, but I really thought that that was a really cool touch that of something that was like super personal in the lore of this story, and it really kind of plays off like Og and Kira's relationship. So I liked that a lot.
And it was personal for Wade too, because he had spent so much time there. Like they could have, I mean, they did. The author did use that as a bit of a way to develop his character, going back to face the reality of his mom's death. And in many ways, that was a great way to connect to the main character and bring in some of his personal story. The Middle Earth planet or shard was pretty fun to read, or just get through in some ways.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite one. Like, overall, was the Middle Earth one.
Yeah, like I'm not super knowledgeable in the lore and history of Middle Earth, but it's still like enjoyable to experience because there's so much thought and love put into it by Tolkien that when you do take something like this book where they spend some time in that world, there's like a residual Tolkien love in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think as far as like the tests or the puzzles themselves go, I really liked the first shard. There was just so
Mm-hmm.
many like steps to uncovering it. I thought that maybe that would continue throughout all the shards, but they seemed really variable as to like go here and beat this video game, or like go here and do this and do this and go here and do this. And like 5 different steps for one shard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I really like the puzzle for the first one that like they found a clue to where the first shard was by placing a flower from the Middle Earth planet on Kira's grave. And then that led them to change the time in Halliday's hometown planet. Mm-hmm. And then like you find the mixtape and go and play a certain song in Kira's room. Like that seemed like a logical puzzle for finding Kira's soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
Can we all agree that the Ninja Princess shard was the worst one?
Yes. Absolutely.
I think the Prince one just dragged on so long for me.
See, for me, I completely agree. But for me, at least the Prince one had a cool payoff.
Yeah.
Like that was my thing. Is like I just felt like the Ninja Princess one drug on where they go into like every single level, and then there's not really a payoff at the end. Like you fight kind of Ninja Halliday, kind of, and
but not really.
Yeah, and then that's just kind of the end of it. And so like, while I 100% agree that the Prince one drug on way too long, like you get a cool boss fight, like
yeah,
that's fair.
But again, that's just from my perspective. But
yeah, with the Prince Planet, like the boss fight too, I'm still a little confused as to how that was resolved. Because like
with the power of music,
yeah, it does just kind of end.
It's like it just sort of ended, and then I was like, wait, how did the 7 princes just decide to stop being evil? Like they're just like, okay, we're done now. You did it. Congratulations. Here you go. You've earned a prize. I don't know. But, yeah.
Okay. Did your opinion of any of the main characters change from Ready Player One?
I mean, I definitely was for that like first 100 pages where he just is talking about his life. I was just like, yeah, I'm starting to relate with Artemis on like all of her life decisions right now. Just breaking up with him, and I really would not have released this headset to the world without a lot more thoughtful consideration than what Wade put into it. And yeah, like I definitely started to connect with Artemis more.
Yeah. I'll say, like, in terms of like the high five, like I feel like this just reinforced how I felt about everyone. Like Wade is just as bad as he was. Like Artemis is still like the voice of reason and like the one that like I would want to like actually be my friend, other than Og, because I need Og in my life.
We all need Og.
But like, and then like even kind of like the first book, H and Shoto just kind of wish they were there more, like to what Chris had given for us. Like, I just feel like it reinforced like exactly how I felt about all the previous all the characters previously.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I Still love Og, still love Artemis. I didn't actually mind Wade that much in the first book. Like, he was a stupid kid, and like it made sense that he was stupid sometimes. But now it's been like several years, and I feel like he should have matured some, and I feel like he
He
just got
didn't.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll say, and maybe that's part of it too. Like it does, like for me, just like kind of reinforcing that. Like I definitely agree. Like Wade is definitely really dumb in the first one, and it really bothers me. But he is like 17, about to turn 18 or whatever. Like, but now he's like we're supposed to
20s.
believe that he's run this company successfully for several years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and like of course all of the high five minus Og are helping with that. But like
You
it's
spend enough time in that kind
yeah,
of environment and you mature, you
right,
grow up.
right. And I definitely would have liked for us to have seen more of like Wade being a business person and like having to
Yeah.
make decisions for the betterment of the Oasis, whereas it kind of just seems like, because he's Wade, he's still just living in Halliday's shadow for the whole book. Like his
Yeah.
success just comes from Halliday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking of Halliday, I have a quote here. Wade says, I saw James Donovan Halliday far more clearly too. He had undeniably been a genius, but until just one day ago, I'd viewed him as a benevolent one whose brilliance and inventiveness had only elevated humanity. Now it was impossible to deny that he had also been a profoundly messed up human being, immoral, disturbed, emotionally detached, a techno hermit who had betrayed the trust of his two best friends in the world. I thought that was such an unfair assessment of Halliday. Um, in the first book, like, yeah, he's awkward and like, I don't know, eccentric and weird. But they also said that he was on the autism spectrum,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
explains why he has difficulties with social situations and things like that. And they didn't make any mention of that in
Yeah.
Ready Player 2. They're just like,
Yeah.
he's horrible. He has no empathy for people. And I'm like, well, yeah, because he can't.
Yeah.
Like, he has a hard time with that.
Yeah.
His brain is not set up for that.
Exactly.
And he did not fully realize the ramifications of his choices until after they had played out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just thought they treated Halliday so poorly in this second book.
Yeah.
Like, his character was more complex than he was an evil genius.
Yeah. And that, I think
Yeah.
that's my biggest gripe too with Halliday specifically is like to use that quote. It's I feel like to some degree it's like, well, yeah, but they leave out the context to exactly what you were just saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's not that those are necessarily unfair statements about him. It's just that they're not bringing in the story of the world they've established about Halliday.
Yeah.
Like it's like Halliday's backstory. Sorry, Emma. Halliday's backstory is almost like a punchline at certain parts of the book.
Yeah. It's what I was going to say was it's like in journalism and reporting, sometimes what they'll do is they'll take a quote someone says and give it to you without the context around that quote. So they'll take this whole thing that someone says in an interview and then just trim it down to one or two sentences to make that person look bad. When in reality, like there's several sentences before and after it that are putting that whole two sentences in context. And it's the exact same thing here, where they've just taken his personality or some of the things he's done out of context of his literal chemical imbalances of his brain. So it's just like, well, you can't say a person is a bad person because of their choices if you don't also consider the fact that he's autistic. He's on the spectrum. Like, he doesn't always understand or think of the consequences of something he's doing. So,
Yeah. And what did we think of any of the new characters that were introduced?
would have liked to see more of them.
Yeah.
Again, like, there's it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier of a lot of the base concepts in this book have a lot of potential, but it needed a lot of work. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the elements, like the low five, I would have loved to see more of them and get to know them as people. Um, but he just didn't capitalize on that. And um, like a lot of those elements in this book, like I would just love to if I had the time, like sit down and rewrite this entire book with all of those elements and just expand and like
Mm-hmm.
make it better and go, here's a different take on your book with all of your elements where like it switches between the point of view of Wade and
Mm-hmm.
then um Lohengrin. So it's like because they're the low five are like the next up and coming high five, essentially, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just from my interpretation of it, like you could have alternated between those two characters, where Wade is trying to find these shards, and then Lohengrin is off with her group trying to find the sword off in the void, and like gone back and forth, and um, just capitalize on something like that. And I just would have liked to, and you could even then send off H and Shoto to like try and accomplish some part of their scheming plot
Mm-hmm.
towards the end to like try and accomplish that. Like obviously they end up in stasis or whatever, but like a lot of these elements, like the low five, would have benefited from an alternating viewpoint like
Mm-hmm.
that of just jumping around from different characters' heads because it is also like it by this point we're all like we're sick of Wade. We're just sick of Wade. We're sick of Wade. Let's get to know these other people. I want to know more of these other people.
Yeah. And that ties into what Nerd Acumen said in chat. Is like kind of tying back to like how Wade can run this company. He said, "I get the impression that overall the high five air quotes ran the company largely by staying out of the way and listening. They basically just let Faisal run everything." And it's like, yep, that's definitely like, and I think that Faisal was a really interesting character that I would have liked to have seen more of. Like, he's kind of like the company's representative to like almost like their like secretary kind of thing, where he's just like he's the one that keeps them on track and is the like the point person. And so like going back to exactly what Emma just said, I think a rotating like perspective where you and I'm like to add Faisal into that idea between Wade, Lohengrin, and Faisal as Faisal works to solve the problems with the IT team, with the people actually at the company, and then you have the other characters out actually doing the questing part that we get. I think that would have been really interesting, and I also think that would have helped the book not feeling rushed and having that artificial time crunch. Because then it's like, oh well, the reason that stuff is kind of slower is because you're getting all these overlapping events. It's not just them rushing through this 1 through 7 shards. Like, and so that's kind of my take on that.
Yeah. And we do see it a very little bit at the end, which we'll probably talk about a little later. Um, in the last, like, what, 8 pages or so, it's an alternating viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
It's not entirely an alternating viewpoint,
Okay.
but It is kind of, but having an alternating viewpoint throughout the entire book would have given that last part a bigger emphasis because it would have introduced this quote unquote new character in the last 8 pages. That's like, wait, hold the phone. But yeah, I just think like I would love to see more of the new characters, and in connection to that, it would have benefited from, as a result, would have benefited from alternating viewpoints.
For sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed Faisal as well. He was the real MVP. Like, he understood the gravity of the situation. He was panicking, but he also kept it together and was like coordinating all of the teams and like making sure people were working on what way they were supposed to be working on. And he was fantastic. I also enjoyed getting to see Kira become more of a character.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts of it in regards to it being a sequel?
I mean, we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, but Ready Player One, just as a standalone, is a pretty all right book. But like having Ready Player Two, reading this in the context and comparing it to the first one, it's very meh and not quite as enjoyable. So, like, I think Shanine, you were saying this a little earlier. Like, in the first book, you could put up with Wade and his stupid decisions because he's 17, and like in that context, sure. But now in this one, several years later, after running a billion-dollar company for several years, he was still the same. Like, as a sequel, it feels like a rough draft in some ways. Like, it's getting there, but it's not fully there yet.
What do you think, Shanine? I feel like you always go last on these.
I don't know. I felt like the world was fairly consistent and like we could see things not in Wade's life, but in other people's lives and like the company in general, like things moving forward and progressing and stuff like that. I think the plot concept was on par, just not executed as well as it could have been.
Yeah, I'll kind of say similarly. I think this book does the thing that I dislike most about sequels, which is when like a sequel tries to like mimic the exact structure of the book before it.
Yeah.
We'll use like Hunger Games as an example. Like, imagine if like all of the books were literally a Hunger Game. It's like that would get worn out, and like even it's kind of interesting because in that series it almost kind of struggles from how to break away from that structure. But like,
if I wanted to read the first book, I'm going to read the first book. If you're going to give me a sequel, give me something new.
Yeah.
Within the context of the same world.
Yes, exactly. And I think that this has some really interesting takes on the world, of course, because that's like the first like 100 pages of the book. But like, but then once it actually gets into the quest for the shards, I think it just very much struggles from like that sequelitis of like, well, what was successful? The references, the game. Do the references in the game again, like that kind of thing. And I also say like I remember reading this and being like, I can't believe how many more things they did in this. There's 7 shards. That's way too long. And then I was thinking about it, it's like, oh, well, there was 3 keys and 3 gates. They just didn't feel like there's only really one more thing. It just felt so much longer getting to that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's because it's in the context. Like with the three keys and the three gates, it's not as clear that there's six
Yeah.
things to deal with. Like with for every key there's an extra step, whereas with this it is like there's a shard. Once you get the shard, then you can move on to the next one. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no second thing to deal with.
No.
But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Emma, did you want to read that quote from Kira?
Yes. So we typically have a what's your favorite quote? And the one quote I marked happened to be turned into a question. So the one quote that I marked was my friend Kira always said that life is like an extremely difficult, horribly unbalanced video game. When you're born, you're given a randomly generated character with a randomly determined name, race, face, and social class. Your body is your avatar, and you spawn in a random geographic location at a random point in human history, surrounded by a random group of people. And then you have to try to survive for as long as you can. Sometimes the game might seem easy, even fun. Other times it might be so difficult you want to give up and quit. But unfortunately, in this game, you only get one life. When your body grows too hungry or thirsty or ill or injured or old, your health meter runs out and then it's game over. Some people play the game for 100 years without ever figuring out that it's a game or that there's a way to win it. To win the video game of life, you just have to try to make the experience of being forced to play it as pleasant as possible for yourself and for all of the other players you encounter on your travels. Kira says that if everyone played the game to win, it'd be a lot more fun for everyone. That was like the only even slightly theological thing I could find in the book that I was just like, yeah, there's a couple of talking points there.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
this quote felt weird to me coming from Kira.
Yeah.
Like, this didn't seem like, with how they were presenting her, it just didn't seem like something she would say. And I don't know necessarily why I feel that way, but it just seems so Halliday. It's so like things could have been good, but instead everything's awful, like that kind of thing. It just reminded me a lot of
Yeah.
what, like, I mean, admittedly, it is a lot more hopeful than a lot of what we got from like the almanac, but like it is still, it just feels a little, I don't know if sad's the right word, but it,
Well, it does in many ways. Yeah, it would fit better in some ways with Halliday as a character because it does go back to in the first book. It we are given the sense that Halliday turned to games as a way of coping with the real world.
mm-hmm,
And he viewed life and the world in the context of games,
mm-hmm,
both video and things like D&D. So it does the whole sort of comparing life to video games suits better with Halliday's personality that we've had up to this point. And that's right towards the beginning of the book. That's
mm-hmm.
um
Page 25.
like okay, page 25. Thank you.
Janine had it in the notes. She was the one that was prepared, not me.
Um like we haven't had Wade quote unquote villainizing Halliday yet. So it's just we have the context of Halliday that we have up to that point is from Ready Player One.
Mm-hmm.
I think this does sound like something that Kira would say in the sense that she is very much in that video game world along with Ogden Halliday, but she still recognizes that in real life, you only get one life and you have to live it.
Yeah. True. I guess there is a bit more of like I didn't thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's a bit more of the, like, I don't almost like understanding the implications of things. Like, we very much, like, yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't thought of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just a bit more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that quote?
Well, so I'm just looking at your question related to it. Kira says life is like an unbalanced video game. One life. Winning is about making it as pleasant for yourself and others as possible. And do you agree? I, I mean, yes and no. Like, I guess for me, in thinking about that concept of making it as pleasant for yourself and others as possible, I'm just going back to my faith as a Christian of my life is not my own. Like, I live my life to have faith in God, and I'm going to go through rough patches, and because God has a plan in mind for me, and whatever that leads me on, it's not always going to be ideal. But does that mean I am just allowed to be as mean to my neighbors as I feel like in that moment? No. Like, we're all going to have sucky moments, but I'm still going to be a decent human being. So, I don't know. It's just, I mean, this second book definitely had me thinking about what would I do in these characters' place? If I were in their shoes, what would I do with all of that power in my hands? So,
I'll say overall, like,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, same. I think, yeah, if winning is making it as pleasant for yourself as possible, that kind of can lead you to take the easy way out
yeah.
a lot, like whatever is going to
Mm-hmm.
be most comfortable and not necessarily the most right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and in some ways with that logic, you're not going to push yourself to improve or learn new things. Like taking the easy way out is just staying stagnant. Whereas going outside of your comfort zone sees a huge, more often than not, sees a huge learning curve in gaining new experiences and
Mm-hmm.
skills and knowledge.
Yeah. Overall, I think it is a very like worldly way of looking at life.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when we bring our faith into it, it doesn't line up.
Yeah.
Okay. The big topic of Ready Player 2, the implications of the ONI. VR implications, medical implications, global implications, moral and spiritual implications, pros and cons.
I
What
love how
do you
you have
think?
pros and cons in the show notes. Like, um, I think this was a really interesting way to kind of tackle that, like, the walk a mile in someone else's shoes idea, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of present a world where, like to use like the work Artemis is doing, like when you are like literally able to walk like in the shoes of someone who is facing like trials, like that definitely changes your outlook. They even address like people's views like on like race and things like that changing because they're able to like literally experience what the other people were feeling and what they were going through. Like I think that like I mean that's like probably one of the biggest pros of what's going on with it, but then there's a lot of cons. So
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna combine this with the next question since what you were saying, Cameron, fits. Kira is talking about Halliday having watched her memories, experienced her memories. She says, but strangely enough, that was what finally allowed Jim to understand me and to see me as a person instead of some trophy he was never able to win. He told me that seeing the world and himself through my eyes was what finally made him understand how broken he was inside. It gave him something he'd always been lacking: empathy. I don't know if you guys are in all the same Twitter circles as me, but empathy has been a very big topic lately because of some bigger names saying that empathy is a sin. And
I'm not in that Twitter circle.
Okay.
No.
Yes, there are like some pastors and Christian leaders that have been saying that empathy is a sin. And there are a lot of thoughts about that.
Yep.
So
I have a lot of thoughts about that right now.
I'm
and I haven't even thought about it yet.
Imaginary red flag
Yeah.
right now.
Right?
Red flag.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Red flag. I mean, this definitely, with the whole concept of the ONI being introduced in this book, like the older headsets, quote unquote, are very much we have them in the real world. Like we have VR headsets. They are a thing that exists. The coding and technology for a vast world to experience doesn't exist like in this book. But we have the headsets, the goggles that you stick on. People are making these haptic rigs, whatever. But when the ONI is introduced in the book, where it scans your brain and like it connects to your brain, it was super uncomfortable a concept for me because I was just like, I don't want this technology in my head. Like, it's just something I don't want. And that may just be in part because of my upbringing, like technology in general. I just don't want that in my head. My head is my head. That's that. But it does. One of the pros I was thinking about today when I was driving was it does have that empathy. Like you can sort of stick yourself in someone else's shoes. And the ONI does have potential for some medical settings. Like I believe that was talked about a little bit in the book. Like there is some chance for medical benefit. And so part of the question here is, would you have released it if you were Wade? And my thinking is I probably would have made the headset more of a medical device for people who had no other way to experience the Oasis, or could have, like, medical people could have used it as a form of therapy for individuals who needed it. But I probably would not have made it mainstream equipment, at least not right away.
You wouldn't have made it and given it out to people who had no way of protecting themselves while they were stuck in asleep
not at
for
all.
12 hours straight? Like...
Not at all. No, especially with what we know of this fictional Earth, where most of the planet is in poverty, essentially. and Wade is just out here building a literal spaceship to run away from his problems. Like, no, I would not have released the O&I headset for people to leave themselves vulnerable and then make plans to run off and say, bye, see you later. But then again, I also spent the entirety of these 2 books yelling at Wade for his stupid decisions. So,
yeah. Okay, let's hang out in the pros of the O&I for a bit longer, though. Yeah, like the medical stuff that they were talking about was super cool. Their accessibility research lab was developing cochlear implants and retinal implants without the implant part, and robotic limbs and simulated sensory input. Like
super
people
cool.
Having the choice to have these, I don't know, call them augmentations, I guess.
That's the part I would have focused on.
Yeah.
Was the medical of like, there's so much medical potential here. Like,
yeah, just really amazing things.
So much
all
medical
possible
potential
without invasive surgery.
Without invasive surgery, which is huge. Especially for like brain damage and like paralysis. There's so much potential, medical potential within. Obviously, this equipment just doesn't exist. It's fake, made up, whatever that word is, fiction. But if it were a real thing, there's so much medical potential for those issues.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have focused on.
Yeah, the other medical use with someone like Artemis's grandmother, who was suffering from cancer and like the side effects of chemo and things like that, who is still able to live a life in the oasis and communicate with her granddaughter when those things didn't, they were no longer possible in the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think of this so much as like the pros and cons of like social media and I mean the internet age as a whole. Like we even saw that in Ready Player One, and it's kind of just like cranked up to 11 here. It's like the pros of this are the same pros that we see of something like Twitter. It is that like it's so easy to spread information. It's so easy to connect with people you would not have known. Shout out to us meeting like Shanine through like Twitter, like, but then like it also just it's so much of those same traps. It's almost like the moderation kind of thing, where it's like, it's good in small doses, but when people can literally spend 12 hours a day in this thing, it's like, well, like it's very hard to for those. I'm like going into that. Would you release it? It's very hard for the overall pros to outweigh the cons to me.
Yeah, and absolutely same boat. Like that does go back to, would I release it for general public use? Probably not, given the weight of the pros against the cons and the cons against the pros. But would I consider the use of it, like what benefit it could have in potential medical scenarios, given what information Halliday had given in that context? Yes, I would have. Yeah.
To play devil's advocate a little bit, I want to talk more about like the empathy factor of the O&I and just being able to share experiences. What do y'all think about that?
So yes, I think there is value in having the ability to experience, say, what it's like to be in a person of color's shoe. shoes. So like what their day-to-day life is like, what they experience out on the streets. My butt comes here with like the ultimate consideration that there is real life experiences, or like it's happening in the real world right now. But in the context of this world and this story, from what I've sort of gathered and put together, a lot of these people in this world don't, like, a lot of them spend most of their time in the oasis, like where you can make your avatar look however you want. Like, I'm not saying that in this world people don't experience horrible things in the real world. Uh, but it just seems like that it would be harder to capture those experiences from real world and translate them to the Oasis if all of these people are doing their jobs online and schooling online and they're just sitting in their living room the whole time. I don't know if that makes any sense. But
no,
like,
it's a little baffling how they have so many like ONI files to be sharing when it seems like everyone just kind of lives online.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
like, how many people are wearing these out in the real world and recording their lives?
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I kind of imagine this world as one where people really only leave their houses because they need sunlight exposure. Like, that's kind of how I pictured this world. But that may also be because the only we don't have a lot of exposure to the real world in anyone but Wade's point of view. Like, and also this goes back to the empathy part of it, where I feel like Wade does lack a certain amount of empathy throughout a good part of both 1 and 2 for the rest of the planet. Like, he knows the world is struggling. He comes from that struggle and the stacks. But again, he's literally spending billions of dollars to make a spaceship to just jet off and go, bye, see you later, peace out. Like, he's spending so much time inside this computer that he's not facing the reality of Earth's destruction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is very much a con of the ONI.
Yes.
What other cons do we have?
So mine is, I mean, it is like the main plot, one of the main plot points, but like, I mean, it literally gives you brain damage if you use it too long.
Yeah.
And from like a logistical standpoint, they seem to have set the fail-safe safety at like right before brain damage happens, which like just feels like an awful decision to begin with.
Take that and cut it in half.
Yeah.
You get 6 hours a day. That's it.
Right. Yeah. And like even like, I mean, I was even thinking like 8. Like I wasn't even
or that.
But like I was thinking just even more than you. But like it just seems like, I don't know. Like it seems like riding in like a vehicle, or like we'll say like an elevator, and it's like if this elevator goes too fast, it will die. It'll explode. But it goes, or maybe it's even like speed. Like it's like you have to go this exact speed amount of time, and then if you go any farther, it explodes. Like that kind of thing. And it just really felt like people are strangely okay with getting their brains fried. Like, which I mean says something about the world, where the case, like the world, actually, like the state of the world. There we go. Which ties into like what y'all been saying. But it's just like people are strangely comfortable with 12 hours when it seems like 1201 fries your brain.
Yeah. They're very close to the edge of the black hole.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Bagheera in chat says, "Oh boy, 11:59. Better cut it now." Like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely. I mean, I said this once. I'll say it again. I do not like the concept of a computer scanning my brain in that kind of way. Like, obviously, there's like CAT scans and things, which are just like medical things. But the concept of sticking something on my head that can essentially read and copy my entire brain and then tell that brain what to feel, what to taste, what to smell is just like, I'm good. I'd rather not have you messing with my nervous system.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just nah. I'll opt out of this one, thanks.
I think part of the reason that Wade being so gung-ho for the ONI in this book, like it bothered me, was that the whole point I felt of Ready Player One was like, real life is better than living in the simulation because it's real.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was the point. And now
that's like literally the conclusion of the book is like, that's the lesson he learns.
Yeah.
Like, it's so upsetting.
And he spends so much time fighting against the Sixers, who are going to take over this entire oasis. And then in this book, he's just like, guess what? We've taken over the entire oasis that we owned from the beginning anyway. And we're going to sell you an entirely new headset.
Yeah, so in regards to this not being real life, Wade says, this was it, the final inevitable step in the evolution of video games and virtual reality. The simulation had now become indistinguishable from real life. Yep. And he's just okay with that.
Yep. And like on this, I want to read the literal last sentence of Ready Player One.
Yeah.
It occurred to me then, for the first time in as long as I could remember, I had absolutely no desire to log back into the Oasis. Like, that's literally the conclusion of the first book.
So I remember, now that you've read that, Cameron, I remember when I finished Ready Player One thinking, yeah, geez, neither would I. I would just not bother ever again.
Yeah. And it doesn't... This book opens and he made it 9 days.
Yeah. Yeah. Just.
Good job, Wade.
Yeah, good job, Wade. Jeez.
The disappointment is palpable. But.
Okay. Yes. Emma said you would release it for medical use, not general consumption.
No.
And yes, we got this question from Justin on Twitter. Thanks, Justin. Mm-hmm. So, Cameron, would you have released it if you were Wade?
I definitely think that I would have landed with Artemis, but I think it would have been more of a debate. Mm-hmm. Like, whereas like it's very much presented to us as Artemis Artemis and Og versus like the rest of the High Five, where they're all for it and Artemis and Og are completely against. Like, I think there's a lot more with the empathy thing, with the medical side. Like, my biggest worry with releasing it at all, even for medical, is that there's no way people are going to stay quiet. Like as soon as it's known that this technology is out, someone is going to try to replicate it. And so like and so like I think you have to land on the side of you destroy it and you burn everything, like scorched earth, like no record of this, like people cannot know how this technology was obtained. Now I don't think I would have gotten there quickly, but and like hindsight is 2020 for what we see for Anorak, but like like it just feels like there's no way that you could really like. Now granted, of course, we're in a world where there's not exactly any more big technology conglomerates, so like there is that, so maybe it's no one else could have created something or could create a competitor, but so if that's the case, yeah, then I'd be much better with like limited consumption or limited use like for medical, but I just don't think you can have this technology out there, especially once we get to like the next thing, which I'll just tease. There's a next thing coming, but like I think once you get to that, there you just
so many issues with that one.
You just can't have this sort of technology out.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, no, I agree. Because like Halliday left it saying like, if you think the world's ready, and I'm super like, no, the world is
definitely not ready.
No, not ready.
In chat, Chunk says, would you guys have been so eager to try it as fast as Wade did?
It would have been tempting for sure.
Yeah, it would have been tempting, but at the same time, I probably would not have tried it as quickly, just because I would be sitting there asking questions.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. Halliday introduces it, and he's like, look at all these cool things it can do. And I would have been like, cool.
Yeah.
Let's give it a go.
I definitely could have seen myself, not like just in my office by myself trying it on. Like that just seems like a recipe like,
other people.
Of like, yeah. But like I definitely would have waited for, I mean, I guess like Wade's hurry is that he doesn't want Artemis to find out. But
yeah,
like I would definitely have not, I would have wanted H there or wanted Shoto or wanted, like, even if I'm not going to like give them specifics, I'd want them to at least be in the Oasis with me when I logged in. Like that kind of thing. Like it just seems like such a recipe for disaster of like, Halliday has this technology. He never released it. Let's find out how it works. Like, it's like, no, I'm good. Nah.
Yeah. Okay, so the other capabilities of the ONI, as it reads your brain and digitizes your memories. It also digitizes you as a person and makes you able to resurrect, quote unquote, people in the Oasis.
Yeah.
But basically,
thoughts.
I was like,
if anyone ever uses an ONI and then they die, you can bring them back to life inside the Oasis, which is
right.
They don't even have to die.
Yeah.
They don't even have to die.
Yes.
Well, but yes. And
I want to reiterate, it's not just they can be brought to life. It's Wade, whose literal qualifications were winning a contest, can bring them back to life.
Now has a scepter.
Right.
Which brought up the last 20 pages of the book.
Yeah.
Which I have a couple separate.
Yeah. That's a whole other can of worms.
Major points of, but first of all, it just completely ruins the point of life.
Yeah.
It completely ruins the point of life, and then the entire population of the planet's gonna drop to 0, and like it just takes the soul out of being a human being.
Yeah. Also, like, just talk about like giant invasion of privacy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Like now, granted, like presumably no one at like GSS, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like none of them actually knew this was possible. except for Halliday. But like, so
And that
like,
wasn't even disclosed to Wade when
right,
he
when he did,
discovered the
right. So like, there is that side of it, but like just like the implications of all of that power. Like imagine like you can create a literal copy of someone. Like think of what that means. Like just think politically.
yeah.
Like that means that if I am was like running against someone for office and I happened to have the scepter because Wade liked me for some reason, I could create a digital copy of the person I am running against, torture them, and get a way to beat them, like or get
Yeah.
people's
Get information
get
from
their
them.
account information, get their bank account, like they're just like
It can so easily be
yeah,
abused.
just like the long running implications of this are just so staggering, like let alone the actual spiritual implications and things like that. But
And there's even, now that I'm thinking about it, within the world of writing, like when you're an author and you're dealing with fantasy or magic or whatever, there's kind of an unspoken rule of if you're dealing with magic or the unknown, you have to set rules in place.
mm-hmm.
Like you can't just do whatever you want. Your characters cannot just do whatever they want with the magic they have. There has to be, this is something we see in like the Aragon series where they have magic that makes them more powerful than some of the other people, but using that magic comes at the expense of
Mm-hmm.
withdrawing energy from their body. Like in order to do a spell, you sacrifice some of your energy, and if you use a spell that's too big, it can kill you. Like there is that
There's
rule
a
in
cost.
place.
Yeah.
There's a cost. Whereas with this, like this scepter thing, there's no cost of I'm gonna press this button and you come back to life inside the oasis. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no okay, when I do that, like I can only bring say 200 people back to life. So then I have to like choose wisely or whatever. Like it's just free reign.
Yeah.
Um and yeah.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts about this. Like one
Yeah.
of
I'm just trying not to
I'm
keep
like,
talking because I
where
don't want to.
to start? Okay. Um, Halliday sends an email um, at the end of his life to Og, and it's part of it says, I want to give the world means to ensure that no one will ever have to lose someone they love again. I think this will make life a lot less painful for most people. At least I hope it will.
This is
Loss is a part of life.
Right.
yeah.
And and
Plus
even going back to
has
like what was said
been.
earlier, it's like, oh, you don't want people to experience loss. I mean, you are in charge of, you're like, you were literally in charge of the like seemingly the most successful country in the world. Like to go on Artemis's like rant, like you literally had the money and power to do something about it, and instead, like you just furthered internet addiction, like as a
Yeah.
company, as a whole company, and it's like, well, like maybe we could have like think of how much money would have gone into that, even from what we hear about just putting together the Oni. And it's like that sure would have been a lot of food that or
Well, and
research like
there's even that whole rant that or spiel that Wig goes on where he's like, we've thrown so much money into trying to save the world and it's done seemingly nothing. And it's just
mm-hmm.
because everyone's spending their time
Yeah,
on the internet when
yep.
you've got a big red button.
Right.
Right. And this is where we are going to get, I'd say majorly theological. Continuing in Halliday's email, he said, "You need to meet Leucotia and decide for yourself whether or not Kira's spirit still lives on inside her. I believe it does."
I'm gonna be honest with you. I never knew how to pronounce that.
I mean,
and that like
guessing.
That sounds way better than how I said it in my head.
Normally, when I don't know how to pronounce a name or whatever, when I'm reading, I just go blah blah.
Right, but yeah, I just love that Og just knew it was a bad idea.
Yeah,
like he was just aware that no, this is not where we need to be. It even like Og, as the only human being living that knows that this is possible, doesn't put on an Oni headset until literally right before he dies, and only to literally save everyone else.
Yeah.
He knows this is possible, and he is so opposed to everything that it stands for that he just refuses to do it. Like that just tells you something about Og as a great mentor character that we didn't get enough of in this one. But
it does explain his resistance to the Oni throughout the whole book. And theologically, it is like the whole concept is one that, especially for me, goes back to, or in my head, I don't know what I meant to say there. It goes back to the whole concept of flesh and blood and made in the image of God. Like wonderfully and perfectly made. Our souls are a part of who we are as people, as living beings, and like there's no other way to change that, I suppose. Like you can't separate one from the other until death. And the other side of the coin to that for me is the whole scepter of resurrection plot point. It came so late in the book that for me, it honestly just felt like something thrown in to be an opening for a third book. Like this is the other thing that bothered me about it, aside from the implications of it, was it felt like it was just put in there as we're gonna, like, this is something that can be used as a plot point for book 3. Like we've sent virtual copies of ourselves off into space with our spaceship, and we can just repeat ourselves once again, and these virtual copies go bad or whatever, or there's a huge riot. Like it felt very much like a plot point stuck in to be an opening for a book 3 plot point.
Yeah, I think going back to the theological implications of the spirit, I think from a world viewpoint, I guess it could make sense that someone's spirit could be digitized like that. Like if you call it like the essence of a person and that it's contained in like their mind, then yeah, I guess those synapses firing could be recorded, and there you go, you have the spirit of a person. Theologically, like that's not, I don't think, what any of us would consider a spirit to be.
Yeah. In chat, Bagheera says, but is it really them though? And because it's crazy, because as a person you change, you grow. It's not you as a person anymore. And I completely, yeah, I would say it's definitely not them though. Like that's like the implication, especially like from a spiritual standpoint. Like it's like, and this goes just to what you just said, Shanine. It's that idea of like the synapses firing is like like there's so much more to the spirit, to the soul than that. And it just boils all of that away and says, oh, look, they're conveniently the same person. Like, and doesn't just like it kind of does the sci-fi thing of like, we just assume it works because we're not going to go into all of that.
I don't want to make that up. I
Yeah.
don't want to put in the time and the
Yeah.
effort to make up all that information.
We spent too much time on Wade's home security system earlier, so we don't have time to go into that now.
And repeating ourselves. We spent too much time repeating ourselves to design 3 entire Elven languages for you. We're not Tolkien. We'll just pick it up because you're doing it poorly.
Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts on the spirit?
I mean, I would just honestly retcon the whole spear into a destruction. I would obliterate it. I would get rid of it. Just no one needs this power. No one has the right.
Yeah.
Okay. And now I have another quote. Wade says after finding out he has this power. We might be part of the last generation ever to know the sting of human mortality. From this moment forth, death would have no more dominion. I have thoughts.
Yeah. And like, I don't want to get into much to a question that we have later on, but like, yeah, I have so much, like, this is that, like so much of this is just like thrown in at the very end. And it's like, there's just so much here. There's like, yeah, again, it's that, to go back to what I just said, it's that sci-fi trope of we just assume it works. Like, we're not going to explain like what this means for the human race. We're not going to explain like the challenges that are going to arise from this. We're going to just assume everything's like peachy keen.
And there's no consequences.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the later question was the biblical and theological themes, I think we can just get straight into that now. But like, as far as saying death has no more dominion, like, I'm sorry, there's still the real world.
Right.
People are still going to die.
Yeah. Like, there's still like literal suffering going on.
Yeah.
It very much reminds me of the like I don't know if this is what's the I hate the song that we sing it in church sometimes, and I hate it, and so now of course I can't remember the name of it. Chunk, you might know. I'm sure you've heard me talk about this before. But there's a now of course I can't even like remember anything about it because I've tried to not think about it so much. But there's a song that we sing in church that basically the premise is like, things are bad here, but we're going to get to heaven someday. And it's just like, but it's like true, but there is still to even go back into like the Kira quote, there is still that need for like a betterment of ourselves and others here.
Yeah.
So that more people can come to know God here. Not just being like, well, heaven's there eventually. Like,
I'm going to sit here and twiddle my thumbs until I get there. Yeah, and with this sort of ideology, again, I could see the whole population just dropping to 0 and going, we're fine. We'll live on forever. Like, not really being more self-involved than really thinking about the world around them. And it also takes away the entire sort of theology behind Christian teachings as well in many ways. Like you can't I feel like you can't believe in both at the same time.
I'm really trying to figure out what this song is.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, like people are still going to be dying, and well, you can still interact with them in the oasis. Like you're no longer sharing life with that person. I don't I don't think an AI of your dead loved ones is any replacement or is going to ease that loss. Like it's a band-aid at best.
Yeah. I also honestly don't think I would want like if a loved one or a close friend passed away and we had this technology accessible, I'm like maybe getting to say goodbye to them in the Oasis would be a good sense of closure, but I wouldn't want to repeatedly go back in and just interact with them inside the Oasis as though nothing had changed, as though like they were still alive. Like I can't imagine just sort of existing in the real world where like, oh yeah, it's someone I cared for is passed away and then looking on and going, oh hey, cared for person.
Mm-hmm.
I can still hold a full conversation with you. Like it defeats the humanity in existence in many ways.
I found the song.
Yeah.
What song is it?
So it's Mansion Over the Hilltop. And so one of the so this is the line that really gets me, and it bothers me for the same reason that the Wade quote bothers me. It says, "Don't think me poor, deserted, or lonely. I'm not discouraged because I'm heaven bound. I'm just a pilgrim in search of a city. I want a mansion, a robe, and a crown." Like it's just like everything's like about that. It's just like get in that mansion and like. And then like the chorus goes, "I've got a mansion just over the hilltop in a bright land where we never grow old. And someday yonder, I'll never more wander, but walk the streets of the purest gold." And it's just so much of like, I want heaven for the reward. And I'm discouraged. I might look discouraged, but it's okay because I'm going to heaven. And like, I just have so many like issues with that song, and I think that ties in so much with this. Is it's like just nothing matters anymore. I'm not discouraged because I'm gonna die, and then Wade or whoever Wade randomly decides to give the staff to when his body dies, or if he just keeps it for himself eternally, like some sort of monster, like they'll just decide to resurrect me and everything will be fine. Like it completely throws away everything else that matters.
Mm-hmm. Like knowing that there is eventually going to be an end to my life. Like it's it brings in that meaning to existence
Mm-hmm.
of like whether it's in reality or in this oasis. It brings in that meaning of I'm going to make the most out of it. And it actually makes me think of The Good Place, the
Mm-hmm.
TV show, where season 4 we see it in their heaven where the people who were in heaven just end up blowing out because there's no end
Mm-hmm.
to their eternity, and so they just get bored and essentially flatline. Like having that eventual end point which granted right now is 70, 80, who knows how many years down the road. Like it brings in that full intention of making the best out of what I do have for me personally, while I still have that time. But if that didn't exist, I probably wouldn't be motivated to do anything. But
yeah, I think the thing that really gets me about this is that Wade seems to think they've conquered death. Like, how arrogant and deluded to think that you have defeated death.
first of all, you.
Yeah.
You
First
did
time
nothing.
Specifically Wade.
You did nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, their defeat of death centers entirely on the servers not dropping out.
Yeah. If the servers drop out, then guess what? You've just gone extinct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have some Bible verses that I will share in regards to defeating death. Isaiah 25:8 says, "He will swallow up death for all time, and the Lord God will wipe tears away from all faces." And 1 Corinthians 15:55-57 says, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But thanks be to God, he gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." It's fairly clear that there's only one who can defeat death.
Right. And it's just like there's just so much in the like it's sci-fi logic. Like I don't want to like keep coming back to that, but like there's so much sci-fi logic here of just like it worked because it's in the last chapter of the book. Like
yeah.
Because we're just telling you about it now. And plot device for a book 3.
Right. Chunk in chat says, sooner or later, the servers always go down.
Yeah, seriously.
Oh, man. Okay.
Okay.
Just okay. Like that. Okay. That's just like...
Okay. Did you guys have any other quotes that you wanted to share that we haven't hit on yet? No? Okay.
I always feel like you pull all the good ones in your prep, and then I'm just like, that was a good quote, Shanine. Oh, that was a really good one, too. And I liked that one. Like, I just feel like, like your prep just gets all the ones I like, and I'm like, oh, yeah.
Okay. While we're kind of on the topic, any other biblical or theological themes you wanted to hit on?
I'll say, even going back to the "O Death, Where's Your Sting" verse, like I feel like one of the major themes of this book is consequence. Like it is that like air quotes sin, and then the consequence of that action. Like and like I feel like we even I mean it's literally a giant plot point called Anorak, but like it's just like there's just all of this. Here's this thing that happened, and here's the relatively obvious consequence of that action. And here's how it didn't make things better until, again, at the very end of the book, magic staff. Don't think about it. But like, yeah. So I think that was a big one for me. And then whereas like, I think this is a similar theme to the first one. It's a little different how it's reflected, but it's that idea of like, I don't want to say necessarily idolatry, but like that like fierce like looking up to someone. And so here we kind of see the other end of it through the little bit that we get of the low five, where we see them actually figuring out that like, oh, Wade doesn't really know what he's doing. we kind of get that like they solved these riddles. They're the ones that figured things out, not Wade, not any of that. And so they kind of get to see, in that sense, kind of see their idol fail.
And that could have, like, absolutely. And again, that just goes back to the point made way earlier of I would have loved to see different points of view. I would have loved to see their point of view on that, of that sort of kind of idolatry, like putting someone on a pedestal who doesn't actually know what they're doing.
Sorry to hop in here on something that's a kind of a change of pace. Bagheera in chat says, either not dealing with it in spaceship or trying to save the world. And Emma, I would like a not dealing with it t-shirt that just has a picture of a spaceship. Or like not my problem or something like that.
I need further explanation so I know what the idea behind it is.
We'll talk about it off. I'll talk to you about it.
Okay.
But I just wanted to get that on the record so I remember to bring it up with you.
Okay. And I will also put it in the Google Docs so that we can talk about it later.
Okay. that comment from Bagheera just got me thinking. I was like, I need that on a t-shirt.
Great.
Yep.
Sorry, I distracted us from our biblical theological themes, but
Okay. Anything else on biblical and theological themes? Okay. We're gonna skip that one. Anything else that stood out to you?
In general, I was surprised, and this kind of even ties in with that other one, of something that stood out to me was how unsurprised I was by a lot of it. Like, they're setting up the, like, could Anorak have been so mean that all these people would die and have their brains wiped by this device that we set the limit at right 1 minute before it gives you permanent brain damage? But, like, would he be so mean to do that? And then it's like, nope, everything was fine. And then everyone just continued to use the Oni. Like, there's just like literally no consequence. And I was surprised at how obvious that felt going into it. And then I was like, oh, that is just literally what they did. Like, even with like the Dork Slayer sword, it's just like, yep, they're going to show up during the final fight to give Og the sword. Yep, they showed up during the final fight to give Og the sword. Like,
if they didn't exist, they would have got nowhere.
Yeah.
All right. It is officially on the record.
Perfect.
With a further note that just is on the record for Cameron.
Okay.
Refer to him later.
Okay. We've got some fun questions to close it out. There was a part in the beginning of the book that was totally irrelevant to the rest of the book. But I guess we kept it in. It was cool.
There was a lot of that, I found. Like, they spend so much time talking about the difference between the recordings, the different types of recordings, and then it just doesn't matter for the rest of the book. I'm like, why did you spend so much time explaining that to us? But it just doesn't matter for the rest of the book.
I'm so happy I was not drinking when you said that. Like, that, I don't know why I found that funny, but that is the best segue into a question. Like, oh man, there's a part that's just completely irrelevant, but
well, it was.
It was. You're entirely right, but like, and I think that's why it's so funny. It's just like, it's like, yep.
I had tabbed it, and as I was going through the book today, I was like, I totally forgot this happened. This was not brought up in the rest of the book. Why was this talked about?
Wait,
but it was.
What exactly was this?
So Wade is like making his own like totally computer generated movies.
Right.
Of like massive crossover events and using actors that are just computer generated. And Totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
Totally irrelevant.
It's
but a fun concept for a question.
He did it because he was bored.
Right.
He had nothing better to do.
I completely forgot that never paid off.
Yeah.
Like,
It's just...
like, oh man. I'm still just stuck on your segue into this question. It's so funny.
Definitely one of those things that Ernest Cline probably threw in there with some intention to do something with it further down the road and then just completely forgot about. Like, honestly, at this point with his writing style, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
I mean, there should have been editors, though.
Right.
Where were the editors?
Where were the editors?
No. I was wondering that for most of the book.
However, if, like Wade, you had endless amounts of free time and could create a massive crossover movie with any properties, with any actors, living or dead, what would your dream movie be?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. I think it would, I mean, maybe it's because we just watched the Snyder Cut, but like, or just talked about the Snyder Cut, I guess. But I think it would be like, it'd be really cool to bring all of the iterations of a character into one movie. So do the Batman movie where you have your crossover where whatever event happens and they're all in the same place, like that kind of thing. And I think that would be a really cool, like, they're all together, they're all tackling all of the villains, like things like that. And obviously not all the villains, that's way too many characters, but like, you know, but that, like, that sort of crossover where you like bring those, the past, presents, almost like Spider-Verse. I just described Spider-Verse. Okay. Yeah. That, but with like live action. Yeah.
But with Batman.
But with, well, yeah.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
I mean, overall, I'm generally pretty satisfied with the state of my enjoyed entertainment content. But just for giggles, I would love to see the Doctor just coming into the MCU and going, "What have you guys done this time?
It's like, no, I'm good. See ya."
What issues do I have to resolve? Oh, evil robot, Buzz, your issue's taken care of. I'm gonna go deal with something else now. Bye. Like, just don't tell me. Don't just bye. So.
I think it would be fun to have like a big mega fantasy event. I don't know, maybe throw in like some planeswalkers and you have them like portaling to all these different worlds.
You had me
on
at Planeswalkers.
Some sort of adventure quest. We can go to Narnia. We can go to Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
We can go.
I've said this before. Okay, keep going.
To outer space. I don't know. Whatever. Everything.
Everything.
I've said this before. One day when I have the time and the money, I'm going to turn the Doctor into a Jedi. That'd be a pretty cool crossover.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. Listeners, let us know in our Discord or on social media what your mega crossover dream movie would be. All right. Another cool nerdy thing that he included was the needle drops, triggering music when you enter certain areas. If your daily life was a planet in the Oasis, where would you put your needle drops, and what songs would they be?
As someone working from home right now, there's not a lot of options.
Yeah.
Like,
if life was
yeah.
regular.
So, one that's would be for me is the and I like it took me a long time to place the music, but leaving work, like even when I was a minister, when I leave work, I always sing the Final Fantasy victory or Final Fantasy X battle music, like the ending when you beat the boss or beat the fight. I always sing that music, and it took me so long to realize that that was from Final Fantasy X because I just did it. I didn't know why that like that sound. So like that's definitely one for me.
That's amazing.
It's oh man. And then like whenever I pick up something important, the Kingdom Hearts opening a chest sound. I feel like that would get so not like picking up anything, but like the this is an important thing based on algorithm. Play the picking up a chest or opening a chest sound.
It just makes me think of occasionally, ever so occasionally, if I'm giving someone something, I will inside my head go, "It's dangerous out there. Take this." Or like if I get something, I'll do the Zelda chest sound, the da 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 whatever. Like that'd be pretty fun. Um, but for me recently, I've been like in my classes because they're all on Zoom right now. I've been playing very quietly in the background. Um, the Horizon Zero Dawn soundtrack, and it actually makes it more interesting because it's just like adds random drama to whatever the professor is saying unexpectedly. Ambiance, whatever that is. Yeah. And it's definitely made it more interesting of just like the music will randomly pick up on like the weirdest thing that a professor's saying. I'm like, oh, now I'm going to like remember that forever because of this random musical cue.
Yeah.
So just little things like that of yeah. I don't know where I would put needle drops. Um, just in the outline of my life, but it is like definitely this concept that I've seen in the past or meme or whatever of um why not just create your own soundtrack for your life? Just make your own soundtrack for your life inside your head.
Yeah. I think for me, I would want closing time to play every time I leave work. Just a great end of the day song.
Yep.
I don't know, the Nerd of Godcast in one of their recent episodes had like, in the Disney audiobooks that like came with the picture book, every time you turn the page, they'd be like, you'll know it's time to turn the page when you hear this sound. And it's like the twinkle. They had that in their podcast, and I was like, I totally forgot that existed, but it takes me straight back to my childhood. I feel like that sound is just a part of me. But it would get really annoying if it played every time I turned the page.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking about um coming soon to VHS and DVD.
Right.
It was just that it'd be way too loud and you'd scramble to turn the volume down.
Yeah.
Or the THX intro.
Yep. All right. A question from Bagheera in chat. Do you guys think this second book will translate well into a movie? if they choose to go down that route, because many of the quests of the first book were changed to better fit screen time.
I feel like there's less licensing things to have to sort out for this one. Like, there's still big licensing things, but like it's all of Prince or it's all
Yeah.
of John Hughes. It's not like I feel like there weren't as many individual references that mattered. It was a lot
Yeah.
more of just the general. It's a lot more of the like again like it's all of Middle Earth. It's all like that kind of thing, compared to the first one. So in that sense, I do think it might translate a bit better, just since it's again it's just easier to grab those things.
Yeah. And yeah, absolutely. In terms of sort of making it closer to the book in that sense, yes. But at this point, with the state of the first movie, they couldn't. I don't think they could keep it entirely close to the storyline of the book and still make sense in connection to the movie part one.
Mm-hmm.
Do I also think it's a good financial choice to make this into a movie? No. So don't do it. But I'm just a lowly film student who apparently doesn't know a lot. But don't do it. It's a bad financial choice.
I don't know. I think a lot of it is very cinematic, and
Mm-hmm.
those parts would translate well onto the screen. Also, doing it in movie form, they're able to cut out a lot of those
Yep.
pointless Wade going on for pages and pages and pages
Ramblings.
about nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe.
Maybe.
Alrighty. After 2 Ready Player books, would you still read more by Ernest Cline?
I'm definitely a lot less excited to.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, yeah. It's. I would probably. I mean, at this point, I need to take a step back and read some other authors. Like, I wouldn't jump right into a third Ernest Cline book
yeah,
right now.
we will definitely not be doing Armada next month. Like,
Please don't. Um, but like Armada, for example, because Ready Player One and Two are a series essentially, like it's a book and a sequel. I don't have any of his other works to make any judgments off of. Like I haven't read Armada, so I don't know if it's just his writing style that bothers me, or like it was an intentional choice for specifically for the Ready Player One and Two books that he made. So like I might try Armada at some point down the road to see if it's decent or whatever. But if it ends up being a similar writing style, then I might just not bother reading the whole thing. So maybe, but not right away.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not like strongly opposed to it, but I'm not like rushing out to do it on purpose.
My dog is sleeping right now, and her paw was just like twitching in her sleep, like she was running. Sorry. Okay. It was super cute. Yeah, I'm talking about you.
Oh, and apparently, Ready Player 2 is in early development.
For a movie?
Yeah.
Oh.
Chunk posted that for us in chat. So we might not have to wait long for whatever this is may be. So
Okay, I have some final thoughts from Chris. He says, the climax of the technology references Sword Art Online, then proceeds to essentially tell the season 1 story of being held captive in the virtual world by its creator.
Yep.
So if you like the concept, I guess go watch season 1 of Sword Art Online.
And I want to clarify, go watch the first half of season 1 of Sword Art Online.
Noted.
The second half goes off the rails.
Okay. Chris also says the ONI tech is presented well and evaluates the tech, presenting both the negatives and positives. All in all, the characters develop from their stubborn youthfulness through their trauma and relationships with each other. All in all, a fun read with nerdy references. It knows what it is.
I feel like it knows what it is. It's like I'm not upset. I'm just disappointed. Like, it knows what it is.
Yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts?
Say, as always, Shanine, great job leading the book club.
All right. We have not yet discussed a watch party, so that we may or may not do that. If you have strong opinions, let us know
in the Discord.
And our next book club on April 29th will be Serafina by Rachel Hartman.
I'm excited about this. This is a book that Deanna and I had started, and so I'm looking forward to going back and reading more. As a quick synopsis, Serafina is set in the kingdom of Gored and follows a 16-year-old Serafina, a court musician. She's drawn into a murder mystery when the crown prince is found decapitated in a manner that insinuates that he was murdered by dragons. The murder occurs on the eve of the 40th anniversary of the signing of a treaty that ended the war between humans and dragons. And then, plot twist, dragons can take human form, but find human emotions baffling, which only ends in the continuing distrust and hatred between them and humans. So, the joke that we had in our podcast host chat is that these are math dragons. Like, these are not like normal fantasy dragons. And so they're very scientific. They're very mathy. And so it's a very interesting book from what I've read so far. And so
I'm excited.
Also, I just have to say, I am greatly appreciative of book club because I have read more books start to finish in the past since we started this than I have in the past year or whatever. Not that whatever, but I feel so accomplished because I'm actually reading books in a timely manner, and it just makes me so proud of myself.
I'm proud of you too.
It makes me so happy. And I'm also reading books that I wouldn't normally just pick out for myself either. There's still things that I enjoy, but it's just I love it. It makes me happy. It makes me happy on the inside. So I'm just putting that out there.
All right. Huge thank you to everyone for joining us in chat. It was great to have you. We are One Geek 411 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Come chat with us in our Discord server. Let us know about crossover movies, needle drops, watch parties, all those things. Check out our Redbubble store. Send us an email at 1stgeek411@gmail.com. Watch us live on Twitch and find our videos on YouTube. Rate and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and check out our website at onegeek411.com. I'm Shanine. You can find me on Twitter at The Hoot and Howl and Instagram at Hoot and Howl Tales, TALES.
And I am Emma. You can find me pretty much everywhere as I am not prepared with an I in the prepared.
And I'm Cameron. I'm pretty much everywhere as Humar Whittle.
Go read a book.
Drink some tea.
I love you.